We have the worst story of all stories.
Well, I've got a
Ladies and
couple.
gentlemen,
Yes.
Mr. Kuna.
Well, I do have a couple of them. So I do shoot a genre that tends to be very bad on cameras.
Violent. It's
Violent
a
on
violent
cameras,
genre.
you know, so I do a lot of aerospace rocket photography. Here's a shot that I'll talk about here on screen. Well, you can see that's the camera we'll talk about in a second, but here on my screen, you've got this shot. So this shot was taken below a test rocket engine. So to start out, I have insurance. I have my equipment insured. I take precautions with my equipment. I secure my equipment. This is not like I'm being reckless with it, right? So that intentionally, I've got this camera set up below it, but I have this camera wrapped in welding fabric, which is resistant up to about 2,000 degrees, then ablative shielding on top of that, right? So I've got my camera and I've got my trigger mounted on top of it. So this is the sound trigger that I use, right? And this is the actual sound trigger that was on top of that camera.
And the sound triggers the camera.
Yeah, and the sound triggers the camera. So I've got it all wrapped, and I've got it. And what ended up happening is I went afterwards back to get it. And actually, so this actually, you can look at it, and maybe I'll have, but like the buttons like kind of sticks, but it still works. Like this.
Wow, it still works.
And if I tell you, what happened to that, so it's down there, it's on top of my camera, it's sitting there on the top of the camera. I had like put the shielding, but there was like a gap, like maybe 3 millimeters, I realized afterwards, of a gap between the trigger and the top of my camera. Well, the violent heat and the stuff got in there, ejected the myops off the camera. I couldn't find it. Wow. I didn't even know what it was because this is a night shoot. It was the night, so we can't. So basically, I've got the camera, I've got the shots, the camera, the 5D Mark IV, perfect, not a problem, you know. But the myops
Was
is
that
gone.
my 5D Mark IV?
No, that's another 5D Mark IV.
Was
I
it?
would not take your 5D Mark
Was
IV
it?
and do that with it.
Because he sometimes borrows my bodies or a
I
lens.
would not put Scott's camera. This was my 5D Mark IV.
Kelly, was it
under
my
my
5D?
insurance.
I think it was your camera.
I think it was mine.
It's actually an old 5D Mark IV that I got from somebody who was not using it anymore. But that's another thing with like my cameras. A lot of times I'm using older cameras that
makes sense.
like because you can I wouldn't put mirrorless out there. Like it's just
I don't use my 5D Mark IV anymore.
You sold it.
Well, maybe I'll put it to good use if you want to. So anyways, so we've got it down there. The 5D Mark IV was fine. The 5D Mark IV was fine, right? But this myops is gone, right? So it's melted off, gone. I'm like, where did it go? So next morning we go out to the shoot, and I found that myops about 100 yards back from the test stand, out in the desert, right?
Wow.
And it turned on. The battery got ejected out of it. The battery door is gone, which actually myops is going to send me a battery door. Battery door is gone. The battery's gone. I put in a new battery. It worked.
Yeah.
And it still works. Like I just used it the other day.
That's a testimonial.
All right, what happened with the camera now?
So that ejects off. So I've got that. But this is so I've only had one instance where I've had my cameras just totally destroyed. And here's the shot that happened before. So this was a 5D Mark III, right? So this is a 5D Mark III. I have this camera mounted. So this is a SpaceX launch, and it's mounted to a metal rail that's driven into the ground with concrete screw. This is a solid rail. And I mounted there because I was like, it's solid. So I've got a platy plot.
Where's this at?
So this is in Boca Chica, Texas.
Boca Chica?
SpaceX's test site.
Rancho Cucamonga.
So this is the first
I don't
test
know where that
launch.
is.
This is the first test launch of a Starship. So my camera's there, and it's waiting for the rocket to go off. But you can see it triggered my camera. This triggered my camera. This was before, because you can see like the little venting that's happening around the rocket over here. You can see those little vents. So that sound's going out, and it's triggering my camera.
Okay.
So this was the first scrub. So I went back, got my camera, got the files off of it, went back, and then set up when they had the next launch attempt. Well, I don't have any of those pictures, because what ended up happening was this was the kind of view. This was another camera that I had farther away from the pad. That was the view from the camera. One of the things you could see the rocks
shot it.
just
Projectiles
being
toward the camera?
projecting. So what ended up happening is the pad literally just broke apart and disintegrated because they didn't have a water suppression system. I'll say this had 2 memory cards in it. Neither memory card was in the camera afterwards. They actually got ripped off and ejected out of the card.
Did you find that? You never found the.
No.
God, there's somewhere in Boca Chica.
I tell you, this one's so bad the sensor is like blown out of it. Like,
But you
there's
know
no
what?
sensor.
Somewhere in Boca Chica.
Somewhere in Boca Chica there is.